Welcome to the week of the most important game in the Matt Rhule era.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is that you're listening, whenever it is that you're listening. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. It is Michigan Week, Part 2, the real Michigan Week, the unofficial kickoff to the week that the Wolverines visit Memorial Stadium. 2:30 p.m. Saturday, CBS, Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson at Memorial Stadium. Can't wait. The week started for Nebraska on Sunday. The Huskers, including their travel-weary head coach, were back in the football building to practice. Today, Monday, is their typical day away from practice, and then they'll get into the heavy stuff on Tuesday. So we are going to jump into what this game is going to look like. Got some numbers. We're going to break down the matchup just a bit here in the first segment. But just a question to start, Connor, and you kind of hinted at this, or you definitely hinted at this in your cold open. Is this game for Nebraska a defining moment for the program and a legacy game for Matt Rhule?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how this isn't the biggest game that he's coached here so far. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I know people will try to always, hedge and say, oh, well, there's another game after this. Of course.
Biggest game is the next game.
Yeah, you still get the rest of the season. Nebraska is guaranteed to play all the games that they're scheduled after this. There's still 8 more. But this has been building and building and building. And the whole thing about Matt Rhule is that it builds and it builds and it builds. And in year 3 or whenever, it finally breaks through at some point. And the thing that Nebraska has been missing is that they haven't beat it. They haven't really punched up. And, we could debate whether this is punching up. They're going to be short underdogs this week, but it's a program that won a national championship 2 years ago. Yeah. It's a program that has beaten the living crap out of you a couple times. Obviously the last time they visited here was I guess 2 times ago when they visited here was 2021. That was a good game that went all the way down to the wire. But other than that, it's been very, very one-sided in this game. And so, like, if you lose it, you just come back down to earth a little bit. And of course, Nebraska could still have a successful season if they lose to Michigan on Saturday. But it would just take a lot of the air out of this balloon. And this balloon's going up right now. So I think this is a huge game for the program, for the team, for Dylan Rhule. From all the standpoints, I think this is just a big one for them.
Some unfinished business from 2021 for Nebraska, and that painful loss against Michigan as the skies grew dark above Memorial Stadium in the late afternoon, and it looked like the Huskers were going to win. And then Adrian Martinez had his forward progress somewhat stopped, but fumbled the ball. It was stripped away, and Michigan escaped Lincoln with a win. That's an enduring memory of the maize and blue at Memorial Stadium, and it's one that Nebraska fans would like to wash away for sure, and they could do that. Nebraska can do that. Nebraska can exercise a lot of demons. 0-11 against Michigan and Ohio State in the last decade. Nebraska just doesn't have these kind of wins. You can debate about whether it's a signature win for Matt Rhule, whether it would be a signature win. No head coach, no permanent head coach on the other sideline. You got a quarterback for Michigan who's in his first Big Ten game.
I don't know that it stands out or it's going to stand out amongst everyone else's wins in the country. But listen to the stats that you just rattled off. Nebraska hasn't beaten programs like Michigan and Ohio State. Nebraska is 0-2 28 in their last 28 games against ranked opponents. Like it's that simple. They need to do this. It needs to happen. And there isn't that many opportunities to do it. But regardless of how many ranked games you have for the rest of the season, it's time. It's time for Nebraska to get itself off the mat and win a game like this, with a chance to, with, like you said, a substitute head coach, a freshman quarterback in your backyard. It's time. It's time for Nebraska to win this game.
Last two Nebraska-Michigan games, 2023 in Lincoln. Michigan was en route to a national championship and stealing everyone's signs, of course. That was the year that the sign-stealing scandal broke, that it became known, but those antics were taking place before 2023. Michigan won that game 45-7. That's the game where J.J. McCarthy was just chilling with his girlfriend on the side, now wife, now mother of their new son. Congratulations to J.J. McCarthy, who lost on Sunday Night Football last night with the Minnesota Vikings. 45-7, that game. And the year before in 2022, 34-3 Michigan. So it was just a laugher. Nebraska scored 10 points the last two times out. You're right. It's like it's time for the narrative to change, for the trend, the storylines around this series to change. It needs to happen for Nebraska.
I don't think I would feel this way if it hadn't been building, right? Like it just feels like you're in the right spot for it. Nebraska is, I always say it on this podcast, Matt Rhule's raised the floor of this program over the last 2 years. And I think a lot of the boxes that they've needed to check in the first 3 games of this season have been checked. This one is still a box unchecked so far as Nebraska beating a team like this, punching up or, whatever it might be. So they've raised the floor. It's time to raise the ceiling a little bit as well. And no doubt you're going to get some attention if you win this game. Not like, win the national championship attention, but like, hey, watch out. This team could be a contender in the Big Ten type of attention or college football playoff. It can happen that fast. So I wouldn't feel this way if I didn't feel like Nebraska didn't have a chance to win it. They absolutely do. And it would mean a lot, I think, for the program.
So I want to look at some numbers, and I want to see if this little exercise here where I tell you some numbers about Michigan's offense and defense and Nebraska's offense and defense, if it shapes the way that you think about this game any differently. Michigan running the football 15th in the nation in yards per game and yards per attempt. Nebraska against the rush, 75th in yards per game allowed, 84th in yards per attempt. The Husker opponents are averaging just more than 4 yards per carry. And then I'll throw this one in. Michigan throwing the football, 83rd in the country in yards per game, 59th in yards per attempt. Nebraska against the pass, number 1 in the country, giving up just 66 yards per game, and number 1 in yards per attempt at 3.0 yards per attempt, which is a crazy low number. That's not going to stay that way for 12 games. 0 touchdowns through the air against this Nebraska defense so far this year. So we'll get to the Nebraska side of it when Nebraska has the ball in a minute. What does that tell you about the way that this game may take shape on Saturday? Yeah,
I think, I think the stats are a little wonky this time of year. Anyway,
yeah, it's not even worth bringing them up until we get to this point. We're a quarter of the way through the season.
Both of the teams have played one quality opponent. Obviously Michigan lost their game against Oklahoma, who was much tougher than Cincinnati. But both teams have been in a competitive game, obviously, and then have for the most part destroyed their competition in the other 2 games. Michigan against UNLV or New Mexico
and Central Michigan.
Yeah. So what was interesting to me about last week, the way Michigan beat Central Michigan, was the fact that they ran Bryce Underwood. So I think they have a little bit of a, they have something of an ace in their back pocket to be able to use him however they want to use him. I thought they were going to just save that for Nebraska. I knew they were going to run him at some point, but I think they found out that he's got to do a lot for them, and he's got to be the focal point of their offense. And their run game is, their running backs are usually really, really good. In this case, I'm not sure if they are really, really good. I think they have one really good receiver, so I think it's just like a light version of what they've been over the last couple of years, with a lot of emphasis on the quarterback. They used to take the emphasis on off the quarterback, and now it's on it. So that's what I've learned about Michigan through 3 weeks. I'm not sure if the stats, necessarily tell me much, other than about what Nebraska has been able to check, right? Like you mentioned that pass defense. I think we thought that was going to be a good unit going into the season, and it has completely, come through in that regard. So I think we could take that as a fact. Nebraska has a good pass defense. Nebraska has a good defensive secondary. How will it play against Michigan? I can't wait to find out.
Okay, we'll finish this discussion after we read off these numbers. Nebraska running the ball, 60th nationally, and at 178.3 yards per game, 44th in yards per carry. Michigan against the run is 25th. They go up 89 yards per game, 17th against the run offense yards per attempt. 2.6 yards per attempt is all Michigan is giving up. And Nebraska throwing the ball, 5th in the nation, 366 yards per game, 12th in yards per attempt. Michigan defending the pass is 43rd and 26th in yards per attempt. So the Wolverines are pretty solid across the board defensively. Nebraska's strength so far clearly is in throwing the ball. Is this setting up as a situation? And this is probably something that could make Nebraska fans, Nebraska coaches a bit uneasy if this game is going to set up as one where Michigan has the advantage when it runs the ball and when Nebraska runs the ball.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I think Nebraska, I don't think it'd be fair to project that yet. Like, obviously, they're going to try. And we'll see how that offensive line holds up. We'll see how Emmett Johnson holds up. Obviously, he's going to have the lion's share of the carries in this game. But if it doesn't, and if they, quote unquote, abandon it or get away from it, the run game, I feel really good about their pass game, So like that's something that you have to lean on. They want to be balanced and they want to do all those things, but obviously first and foremost, you have to win the game. And I do think Nebraska's best, route, their best vehicle to get there is probably through the air. So we'll see how that works out on the ground game first.
Yeah, the numbers are the numbers, and I don't think that they're all entirely real, because I think a lot of Nebraska's run game, quote, run game, is the short pass game. You see Nebraska hand the ball off, Dylan Rhule to a Ja'Cory Barney, or it could be Mosey. I think there are others, Cortez Mills, who could get involved in that part of things where they're just basically handing it off forward. That counts as a pass. They're really running the ball in that situation. So the numbers are skewed a little bit more toward the passing side when I would say Nebraska's run offense is more effective than what the numbers say, 60th nationally in yards per game. So the Huskers have to do a good job against Bryce Underwood on the ground is what I'm saying. Like, he is potentially more dangerous than Brendan Sorsby, the Cincinnati quarterback. I think just athletically, he's right there. Doesn't have the experience.
Yeah.
But
well, we can talk about this more when we come back, but like, he's a different runner than him. I think Underwood, they're going to design some stuff for him. They didn't do that much for Sorsby. So
scrambles.
We got 4 days to talk about this. I'm so excited already.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back, talk more about the Michigan-Nebraska matchup, what we're seeing from Nebraska, especially when it comes to the newcomers on this roster. That's coming up next. A word right now from the Game Cap. Got a quick question for all of you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yeah, I said hat. For me, it would be the Game Cap. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage style hats that fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use the code Locked On, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. We've had some sent to us. They are quality hats. They look like the hats from the vintage era. Connor, you've got one or two. I know I've got one that's been passed around my house. Head to gamecaps.com. That's thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use the code Locked On for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game.
And another word from our friends from 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee. Plus, B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. They're also incredibly portable. You guys have seen them. They're about this big. 5 Hour Energy shots. You could toss them in your back pocket on your way to wherever you're going throughout the day. Maybe you won't be back at home for 12, 14 hours, especially on a game day, something like that. Then you get close to the end of the day, bang, 5 Hour Energy shot, little shot of caffeine will keep you rolling throughout the remainder of the day. Tons of different flavors as well on the website, and it kicks in fast. So enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you here on a Monday on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Okay, so a couple developments over the last couple weeks. Number one, I think a lot of people feel good about the team, maybe where they were weary after game one, but now they're like, all right, took care of business against some worse teams. It was a box that Nebraska had to check, but individually, this is something that we didn't quite dive into yesterday on the reaction pod, but there was a lot to like about not just young guys that played the entire second half against Houston Christian, but also, starter level guys who finally really, really popped on Saturday.
Yeah. On the offensive side, we did talk during the show Sunday about TJ Lateef, the backup quarterback, and Cortez Mills, the receiver who caught a 62-yard touchdown from Lateef. That was a piece of art there into the south end zone at Memorial Stadium. Those two guys are out of the gates well in their careers at Nebraska. Dawson Merritt, true freshman, was out there making hits at linebacker against the FCS opponent. He looks ready to go. I talked to him after the game, and I feel like he's got the right mentality to be a successful player in the Big Ten. You remember, this is a guy who was committed to Alabama last year. Isaiah Mosey committed to Oregon last year. He caught 3 passes on Saturday, returned a punt for 38 yards. Did you know that Archie Wilson got into the game on Saturday against Houston Christian?
Last play, he was the safety man on the kneel down by Marcos Davila, which I was like, all right, nice. I didn't hear I was watching on like quiet by that point. I didn't hear did he get any sort of reaction or ovation from the crowd?
I don't think anybody noticed. Okay. I heard about it, and then I checked the participation report and saw there he was, in fact, number 83. So he has played at Memorial Stadium now. That will be insignificant at the end of the year. But the punter has gotten into a game. This week, we do expect that he will get into a game to do his actual job.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if not, then great things have happened for Nebraska.
Right. In the normal circumstances, or bad things have happened for Nebraska if there's some reason why Archie Wilson is unavailable to punt, but right. We're not going to go there. So continuing with the conversation about first-year Huskers who have made a difference, we will see Archie Wilson this week. And then there's the transfers, especially on the defensive side, where you had Williams Winery with the scoop and score touchdown. You had Marquess Watson Trent, who had a flying sack against Houston Christian in the first quarter. Dason McCullough had a sack. Andrew Marshall, Jameer Khan, those guys are just out there making plays in the secondary. This is not to mention Dane Key, who's caught a touchdown pass in all 3 games for Nebraska. Saturday was a quiet one for Isaiah Hunter, his partner in crime at the wide receiver spot, but Isaiah Hunter has shown himself to be quite a player in his first 3 weeks with the Nebraska football program this season. And there are others out there in the first year Husker category who have I think changed the look of this program. Nebraska is a different program from this time a year ago because of what the newcomers added in the offseason have given to Matt Rhule's team.
Yeah. I thought of another one. I mean, yeah, probably a good thing that we haven't talked much about Rocco Spindler yet. I mean, he's just been good, the entire time. One of the anchor points of that offensive line, which is awesome. I think it's that, Mitch, like combined with they've been able to really linearly create some depth, right? Some of these young guys who have gotten a chance to play over the last 2 weeks now in times where Nebraska has destroyed their competition for a long period of time. You kind of like what you see there. So I think that's maybe not equally as important for this team, but equally as important for the success of the program going forward. You just feel good about what's coming up next. They're not to say that they're all going to be like all conference guys or anything like that, but it's similar to the idea of, when Nebraska in the 90s would have an all conference guy and then a guy who would never played the next year would be preseason all conference. You could just depend on it. Right. So I think you could just depend on Nebraska creating some depth from the young pieces of their program. And what they've done in the transfer portal, like you said, with some of these guys, is obviously they've gotten hits on the majority of them so far, which is what they needed.
And we didn't mention Kyle Cunanan, who's been perfect on field goals and extra points, and Kevin Gallick. Don't forget Kevin Gallick, the snapper. Nebraska, with all the snapping problems that Nebraska's had in the past few years, so far they have you haven't noticed him, which is a good thing. So if you look at this team at this time a year ago, Nebraska started 3-0 in 2024, wins against UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa. And then the Huskers went into Big Ten play and they lost on a Friday night at home against Illinois in deflating style. It was a deflating type of game. Yes. Do you feel like these changes that Nebraska has made, these additions that Nebraska has put into place, and has seemingly the way that the changes have taken? And we're not just talking about all the newcomers, but there are redshirt freshmen out there like Donovan Jones in a starting spot. Like Ja'Cory Barney, who's emerged into a bigger role on the offensive side. As different as the team is from this time a year ago, how much of a better place is Nebraska in going into this Michigan game than it was going into the Illinois game a year ago?
I guess I would hesitate to say way better, because I think we're about to have that revealed on Saturday, and as we go throughout Big Ten play. But it feels quite a bit better. You could start. You could start wherever you want to start. There are players who are back from last year who are noticeably better. I think your 5-star quarterback being one of them. I think there are position groups that are noticeably better than they were last year. There is also
wide receiver that jumps off the page when you talk about the what position group has upgraded.
Absolutely, it's no doubt the first one on my mind too. And there are a couple groups where you're like, okay, we lost a lot. We have to find, we have to find ways to be successful and make the math work in our favor. And Nebraska's still working on that. That's why you can't have a completely full answer. But I would just say, like, the state of the program and the health of the program, it's really, really good right now. At the same time, Nebraska's 3-0 and people feel really good about it. We'll see. We'll see how the next few weeks turn out.
All right. Let's come back with some thoughts on what Matt Rhule might have to say on Monday in Lincoln, and take a spin around the Big Ten and college football to finish up Week 3. That's next. A word now from Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. The season is heating up in the NFL. College football is well underway. Whether you've got your eye on a big name quarterback or a breakout running back, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. Got something that you want to look at for Monday Night Football? 2 games on the docket tonight. You can have your favorite players on your side because Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could end up cashing in and winning 2,000 times your money. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code Locked On College to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. Run your game.
And a word from the FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is indeed here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff, whether it be tonight or the remainder of the season, with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So you could take a look at, like Mitch said, we have a doubleheader tonight on Monday night. Houston is a 2.5-point favorite against Tampa Bay. Vegas is a 3-point underdog at home against the surging Los Angeles Chargers. So whether it be player props, anytime touchdown scores, or just if you want to pick a winner, it's all available for you on the FanDuel Sportsbook. And once again, there is incentive to do so. That first $5 bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet today.
Final segment of this Monday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. So Matt Rhule will speak to the media, to the Nebraska football public at 11:30 Central Time today. Set the tone. This conversation that he has usually sets the tone for what the week looks like. Remember, just a week ago, we heard from Matt Rhule at this time, and he told everybody that he got pissed off and really fired up in the locker room at halftime against Akron. And then we talked about that for several days after
thank
the
you for
video
saying
was
that,
released.
Matt Rhule, because we needed something to talk about last week.
We did. I would imagine that Matt Rhule is going to have some things today to say about his little trip to Las Vegas on Saturday night and return home. We saw him posting a video, or Nebraska football posting a video on Sunday morning, just to let everybody know that Matt Rhule didn't take the day off on Sunday because he was jet weary. He was back in the office hanging with Corey Campbell, watching film in the morning. That was out there.
Yeah, which is, I don't know. People get worried about weird stuff, but it actually probably needed to happen. So yeah, well, I can't wait to hear him talk about it.
If Nebraska doesn't play well against Michigan on Saturday, it's not because Matt Rhule went to Las Vegas this last weekend to watch Bud Crawford fight. There are other reasons. He was equipped with a computer, imagine that, on the private jet, and was watching film, breaking down film, going through all of the things that he normally would have done if he was at home in Lincoln. And then he was in the office and plenty of time on Sunday to be the head coach and preside over Nebraska's the beginning of Nebraska's game week work for the Wolverines.
You know what's amazing? Like a private jet almost serves as like it almost serves, in especially in his case, as like a television, right? So like he gets on the plane, he works as if he was, at his own house. Then he actually goes physically to the fight instead of watching it on Netflix like the rest of us. And then he comes back and either goes to sleep on the plane or he, keeps working, right? There's just no wasted time. There's no wasted seconds. It serves as basically the television in his living room, except for now he gets to watch the fight with his own eyes and show his face and shake hands with people and all that stuff. Private jets, man, that's a great thing. We got to get the Locked On Podcast Network to get us a private jet so we can go places.
You think we can maybe do that?
Yes, definitely.
Seems like that's probably going to be in the cards. Okay, so let's take a final look back at week 3 in college football. This was an eventful week, especially on Sunday. So stuff off the field is what we're going to spend some time focusing on here. UCLA is now searching for a coach. So Deshaun Foster, I don't know where he's at. I don't know if he's still in LA, but he's no longer the coach of the UCLA Bruins. He was fired on Sunday after an 0-3 start. UCLA lost to New Mexico on Saturday. That was followed. They followed the losses to Utah, which was excusable, although probably not the fashion in which UCLA lost that game, 43-10. And then UNLV beat the Bruins in Vegas, and they came home and lost to New Mexico. So 0-3 Nebraska goes to the Rose Bowl, of course, on November 8th. There will be an interim coach. There already is an interim coach in play in Los Angeles. Also, Virginia Tech fired Brent Pry, who was in his fourth season. So the coaching shenanigans, the coaching carousel has begun to spin, and it is September 15th.
Yeah. Don't get housed by a group of 5 or an FCS opponent on your home field. That's a bad thing, especially after you're on thin ice. Anyway, New Mexico ran for like 300 yards against UCLA. This will be really interesting to see what happens, because that is a horrible job. That is truly a horrible job with the situation that they're in. They're obviously, as Deshaun Foster mentioned, they're in LA, which is helpful in a way.
It should be good. It should be good. But
also like not helpful in a way as well. Nobody goes to their games. They're in a tremendous amount of debt from their athletic department. He was put in a bad spot because Chip Kelly left late a couple years ago, and he took over in like February. So maybe now that they have, a couple months here, they could just court Tony White the entire time. I don't know.
Yeah. Tony talked to them last time before they hired his old teammate, Deshaun Foster. And I'll be really interested to see if Tony White pursues that. I would expect just on the surface that he would. He is a Bruin. But if things continue to go the way they're going this year for him at Florida State, is it a situation where he's going to do better than UCLA? Which it sounds bizarre on the surface. It's your alma mater. It's UCLA. But I mean, come on. Like, are you set up to win there, or are you going in?
You would need some assurances. You would need the athletic department to say, yeah, we're investing and we're going to give you all the support that you need. It's just all depends on how these guys see it. Some coaches might look at it and say, hey, look, there's a lot of opportunity here and there's a sleeping giant. Some coaches might look at it and say, I will never be able to get this thing off the ground and I'm going to get fired again in 2 years and I don't want to do that. So we'll see what Tony thinks about it. I assume he'll be a top candidate for the job.
He'll be one of the top candidates. Will they want to go with former UCLA player who doesn't have head coaching experience for a second consecutive time after the Foster thing went the way it did? That would be unfair to Tony if they choose not to go that direction because of Deshaun Foster's lack of success, but we'll see. Sometimes you just want to go the opposite way, and sure. that's how programs operate. All right, 2 more things I want to talk to you really quick. Cal, this is opponent watch for Nebraska. Cal beat Minnesota on Saturday night. I don't know that a lot of people were paying attention to that because this is when the Crawford Canella fight was going on, but Cal's 3-0. It scored the final 17 points in that game. I'm surprised. I thought Minnesota was going to go in there and win that game, but Minnesota was not the Minnesota that we've known them to be, at least when they've played Nebraska in recent years. -2 in the turnover category and not a strong finish for the Gophers. So that, I don't know. It doesn't bode well for the Big Ten.
Yeah, we're probably not giving Cal enough credit. They've been a pretty solid team over the last 2 years. It was always possible that Minnesota could lose this game, but yeah, they didn't. They looked one-dimensional, so not terribly explosive in the pass game. They always have like one good wide receiver. And then, they can only do so much to hold them down on defense if they're not on schedule on offense. Coy Parrish, their all-star safety, forced a fumble in that game. And, he's going to play some offense for them. I think he had a catch in the game. So,
he did, but it was for -9 yards.
I don't think any differently of Minnesota than I did before the weekend. Just that they lost the game. I think they'll still be a threat to whoever they play.
Okay, let's spend 2 minutes on this because if we don't get to this right now, I think it's going to get lost and we're not going to talk about it this week because we're going to be so in the weeds on Nebraska, Michigan. Did you see what happened with LSU coach Brian Kelly after the Tigers beat Florida 20-10 on Saturday night?
He loves to go viral for no reason. This guy triggers me. He makes me angry.
So he got really mad at a reporter whose first question was about the Kelly offense, about LSU's offense. It wasn't even like a pointed question. The reporter did not say, why does your offense stink? His question was, what are you seeing with your offense? And Brian Kelly was like, that's not fair. You can't ask that question right now. That can't be the first question. And so then the guy came back with, all right, what's going on third down? And Kelly says, I don't know what you want from me. So the reporter came back with, I think people want to know why you can't run the ball. So he kept getting more and more aggressive with the questions, which was kind of funny to see. LSU's 3-0, ranked number 3 in the country. The offense hasn't been great. They haven't scored more than 23 points in a game this year. Garrett Nussmeier's not playing like the Heisman Trophy candidate favorite that he was, one of the favorites that he was supposed to be. I'm not sure why Brian Kelly feels the need to get so upset like this. It is bizarre. He's bringing attention to his team, which is playing well, for all of the wrong reasons. Now, all people want to do is talk about this instead of the fact that LSU's possibly the top team in the SEC this year.
Yeah, he's a crybaby, and he always does stuff like this. And like he could have just gone along with it. Hey, what's your offense looking like right now? Well, I think it's looking pretty good, and then move on to the next question, right? Instead, he has to be like, why would you ask a question like that? Like, dude, sometimes it's just going to happen that way. People on the internet could talk about whether it should, or these dumb reporters asking dumb questions and stuff like that. The bottom line is the coach needs to handle it better, and he never handles it well. Brian Kelly, he's been a coach for decades at the highest level of college football. He never handles it well. He always freaks out like this. I can't stand that guy.
So congrats, Brian Kelly. Now everybody knows that your offense isn't good. And if you hadn't done that, people would be talking about how your team was 3-0 and ranked 3rd in the country.
Nice job.
They've got Southeast Louisiana on the schedule this year before 4 ranked opponents in a 5-game stretch. So when I watch LSU now, I'm going to be looking to see like, oh, is their offense any good? Like, because I know that's a problem.
Yep. Way to go, Brian. Another job well done by you. That's it for us today. We'll be back with you tomorrow. We'll have clips from Matt Rhule's press conference coming up late this morning. It's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll, Gary Patterson. Yes, that Gary Patterson. Jesse Holley. They have you covered on Thursdays throughout the season, only on Fire TV.